What I'm going to be talking about a little bit is how we took a process that had 23 people doing it company-wide and reduced it down to one person 2 hours a day. So that's what our session's about today. We're going to be talking about all out-of-the-box functionality. We're still on the SharePoint 2010 environment. I don't know how many people are still on SharePoint 2010. Okay, good. We are hoping to upgrade to 2013. We're just trying to get our budget approved and make sure, are we going to go hybrid? Are we going to go cloud? Are we going to stay on premise? So that's where we're at in our stage. But everything I'm going to show is on SharePoint 2010 and also using InfoPath. And I know InfoPath is being deprecated. They've been saying this for years, but I still believe that we have a few years left. I think they said we have a 10-year plan. So I'm still going with it. So that's where I'm at. A little bit about me. I'm Sandra Mahan. I'm out of the States. I'm from Idaho, small little town in Idaho. I actually work for a large insurance company. We're part of the Blues, the Blue Shield, Blue Cross brand. I don't know how many people know about that. But I've been in human resources for about 20 years. And I know it's a strange jump from HR to IT. Did a lot of different things in HR, benefits, employee relations. I used to actually fire people. So I kind of know a little bit about firing people. That was not the fun part of my job. Moved into business systems analyst for about 7 years. So I've done a lot of requirements gathering and working with our employees and understanding what they're looking for from an IT department. So kind of how we translate that to the IT department. I really love sharing what we've learned into SharePoint with the power users. So that's kind of where my background is. I'm not a programmer, although I was an AS400 programmer during Y2K. Again, strange transitions. So again, like I mentioned, we're not here to talk about how really to fire people. My boss is probably thinking, you're going to talk about how are you firing people? Don't tell anybody in the company that this is what you're doing because they will freak out. We've gone through some layoffs here and there and people are like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? But again, we're just going to talk about how we've reduced processes. Again, out of the box functionality. Again, I am just a power user developer using everything out of the box. I have a programmer that does coding and all that kind of stuff in the back end. When we first started going through this, we were going through gathering requirements and I kicked him off the team because he was going too deep for our customers. They just didn't understand what he was talking about. It was confusing the whole process. So we wanted to make it easier on them and just kind of walk through different things. So what we're going to talk about is how we gathered the requirements, how we populated the data. Again, out of the box functionality, we did not code anything. We don't have any interfaces with other systems. It's all contained within SharePoint. I'm going to show you how to do workflow history alerts, about how to audit the data, and then how we turn the admin process back over to the administrators. Not IT administrators, business administrators. So we're going to forget you ever saw this slide when we talk about it, and then we're going to go on. This is the process that we did. It's called our Utilization Review Accreditation Commission. It's called URAC. It's something that's important to insurance companies. We have to be audited. We have to make sure that everything that we do is in compliance, that our users, our employees have the right credentials to be working on claims and working with our members. Some of the stuff that's involved in this process there were daily changes in our environment with our employees. We had new hires coming on every day. We were terminating employees. People were moving around. So we had to track the process to know where people were coming and going throughout the system. And what this does is it actually goes through, and we needed to make sure that we had everybody's resume on file. We had everybody's training history on file, their performance reviews. If they were nurses, we had to know that they had the correct RN licensure. Doctors had to be certified. So that's what this process is about. Again, you may see me refer to URAC here and there throughout the presentation, but that really has nothing to do with what we're talking about. This is just something that I want you guys to look at processes that you're currently doing and seeing how you can change those or make it easier on your users, again, by out-of-the-box functionality. So our initial state was what we had. We had, again, 23 users throughout our company maintaining this information. They would go out and collect employees' resumes. They would collect their performance reviews, their training history, and they would upload it into a file share. We had a T drive. We put everything out there. And then there was a master Excel spreadsheet that they would go out and put the information into. And we have about a little over 700 employees that are affected by this accreditation process. So to maintain that between 23 people throughout the company in different departments was a nightmare. And the reporting was incredible. This one person that was our administrator would go through and look through each of the file shares and mark whether they had all of the components that were needed. Then when it came audit time, they would have to go, the auditors would come in and they would say, show me all the data on this person. So then they'd have to go through all those file shares and gather all the required information on about 50 employees. So again, terribly cumbersome process. We had hard copy documents of driver's licenses and certifications that had to be scanned into the system and then put into those file shares. Again, 23 employees, again, the daily changes were what was making everything difficult too. So what were our options? You know, we could build a system and interlink all of our different components. You know, we have a talent management system that records all the training. We have, again, the file shares that have our resumes on it. We have the, talent management system where people go in and apply for their jobs and bring that into SharePoint. We could have brought all of that together and done a whole bunch of interfaces. But if one of those interfaces fails or we've programmed something wrong, guess who gets blamed? IT. And I didn't want to be blamed for anything. So I passed it back to the users. I passed it back to each of those external systems. And what we ended up doing, again, our process at the end of it, we had one person doing this on a part-time basis. That was her original full-time job going to be. Once we got everything set up, that was all she was going to do. So when we took her job and only made it 2 hours a day, she had to go to her boss and say, I need more work. I'm out of work. I don't know what to do. So again, we took it into SharePoint. We wanted to be able to display the information on a single person all in one place. And we were able to reduce our audit time. So let me kind of show you how we did this. So first was our gathering requirements. And how many of you feel like this when you have to go out and gather requirements? It's like, the business users, they don't know what they want. They say, make it better, make it pretty, do something for me that's going to wow me. So when you go into that first meeting, you want to ask a lot of pointed questions. I know they're going to tell you, hey, this is what we want, but a lot of times they don't really know what they want. They don't know what functionality SharePoint has. So you want to kind of guide them briefly. You don't really want to give them a lot of technical terms. I hesitate a lot of times to even use the word workflows with our users because they don't really understand what that means. It's a lot easier to say, okay, once you get that resume or once you get that piece of information, what's going to happen to it? They're like, oh, well, we put it in an envelope and we send it to the finance department or something like that. Well, how would you like that if we actually automatically sent it for you? Oh, I'd love that. They get all excited. It's like, this is something I can really use. So try not to use too many technical terms. Listen and take a lot of notes. Document everything. I love OneNote. OneNote is great because there's probably about, I'm from a company of about 5,000 employees, and about 1,700 of those work remotely. I work from home. A lot of my coworkers work from home. Everybody that I work with lives in Portland. So I never really have face-to-face meetings. Unless they want to come to my house in Idaho, they could, but nobody does that. So we do a lot of link sharing. We show stuff on the screens. We do our OneNote notebook, take all the notes in there, and then I can email it right to them. They see exactly what I'm typing, so they know that I'm getting the right information from them. And again, suggesting solutions during that initial meeting will sometimes confuse your users. We attempted to do this. Again, like I said, I had a programmer that was part of the initial discussions, and I kicked him off the team because I'm just like, you are making things way too complicated. We don't know all the requirements yet. And to start suggesting solutions, it gets confusing for the users. They can't visualize it like we can. So when I go through, this is kind of a list of the questions that I start to ask the users. When do you need this? Very obvious question. That's going to set our time frame and our requirements of when we need to get different pieces of it done. Next, is it a temporary or a long-term solution? If I'm going to build this application and it's going to take me 40 hours or 5 days to build it, and they're only going to use it for 2 months, is there really a return on investment? Does it make sense to really go this deep into it? They may say yes, we have to have it, but at least it sets that expectation of how long they're going to use it, how long I have to build it. So how many items are going to be entered monthly, daily, annually? This kind of sets you up for that 5,000 item limit threshold. You want to make sure, you should always index your main columns so that you can sort that information. But if they're only going to get like 5 records a month, you have a little bit of leeway and time there, but it just helps you kind of figure out how your filters are going to run and how you're going to set up those views for the users. How many people are going to be using the application? And do they have to have special permissions? Like, do we want to make sure that Sally can't see Bobby's information? How are we going to set up the permissions there? Are we going to restrict different things? How many of you guys have used impersonation workflows? They are awesome. Impersonation workflows let you set things up. As soon as something's created, it strips away the all user access, and then you can assign it back to the person that created it. So if you haven't seen those are a great way to be able to do different things to set up permissions. One of the other questions I like to ask is, what are the benefits of automating this process? And this is a little bit from their benefit too, to understand why are we doing this? What's going to make it better? But it also is really good for me to tell my boss, like, hey, guess what we're doing? Look at how we improve this process. At the end of it, we saved 40 hours of work for these people a month. Give us a raise. No, I'm just kidding. Some other questions, how will new items be added? So are they going to individually input every item? Are we going to take an Excel spreadsheet and copy it in? Are we going to use a system interface? How is the information going to get into the system? What happens when a new item is added? Again, this is where we get into the workflow piece. Is it going to go to somebody next in a different area? Or is it going to stay in the system? What's going to happen with it? Does the item require versioning? And how many versions does it require? Again, this was a government-regulated process. We needed all the versions. And it's not going to be updated that often. So typically, we're going to have less than 10 versions on the item. But we kept it turned on for everything. But if you're going to have hundreds of versions each day, people are going to be going in there and updating stuff, you may want to limit the versioning. And then what's going to happen to the current process? Critical information. Are you going to want us to import all your old data? How are you going to get all that old data, and how are we going to format it to fit into the new system? Because if they're going to do reporting on it, what are we going to do with it? So after I have that meeting with them, I like to send them away with some homework. I'm not going to do all the work. I can't read their mind of what their drop-down lists are going to look like. I don't know what the emails they're going to send to people. This is when, again, we talked about the workflows. I don't call them workflows. I'm like, what's going to happen after this? Are you going to send an email to somebody? So what's that email going to say? What's the subject line going to look like? What's the body of the email? What fields do you want brought into that email? Oh, and they get excited about that. They love having all those variables in there so that they can say, I'm going to send it to XYZ person. Here's the document I'm asking for. Here's all the information. And then calculated fields. I don't know how they want these fields calculated. I need to know that from the users. And then finally, reporting. What types of reports are they going to need at the end of this process? So again, if they're asking for specific reports and they haven't asked me to put those fields into the form itself, I can't report on it. So then I build a flowchart for them. This is the flowchart we used. I say a simple flowchart, it looks busier than it is, but what I'm doing is just saying, we're going to get the information from someplace, somebody's going to do something with it, and we're going to start a workflow. If it's a new hire, we're going to update the master file. If it's a rehire, we're going to do this, a promotion will do this, termination will do that, and then we stop the workflow. This kind of helps them get their minds around what's really going to happen with the documents when they come in. I love Visio. Visio is great. So those icons I used, if you're not using Visio or have used Visio and just use the little diagram boxes, this one here under workflow, flowcharts, and workflow objects gives you those kind of fun little icons so that they can see it a little bit more representation of what's going to happen. So what do you guys do? Anybody have any questions that we didn't cover when you guys asked for requirements? Anybody? No? That's okay. So our next step is populating the data. We started building the form. We have our master file. This is what our master file looks like. It's kind of the hub of all of our stuff. It's the center of our universe. It's the information about each individual employee. Again, we have about 700 employees that we track throughout the year. Some come on new, some leave, some move to different departments. The top part is our demographics section. This is the information about the employee. What their name is, what department they're in, what state, when they were hired, when they started into this URAC position, job start date, department date. So again, this is all of our demographic information. Then the middle section is our certification section. This is where we know if they've completed all the different required components. So we said, you know, if they completed this, the department orientation checklist, then they got a yes. If they did the annual privacy refresher stuff, it's based on their expiration date. They had to do it within a certain period of time. We just kind of color-coded different things. And then the final section of that master file that we have is our history section. So every time something gets changed on that employee, we have historical information that we can know exactly what happened with the employee. We have versioning turned on, but when the auditors come around, we don't want to have to go through that version history and try and show them there. So we built it right into the form, and I'll show you guys how we built that because it has been really helpful to have it all right there for the person. So again, back to our flow chart. This is where we kind of started with. So as far as uploading the data, we actually get the information from our HR technology department. Again, I didn't want to have an interface with our HRIS system. I said it's too complicated. We wanted to start out simple. Our users hadn't really defined everything they needed yet, so they didn't even know what kind of information they'd be bringing in from the system. So we said, well, let's start out simple, and then we can do some other stuff phase 2 if we want to automate it more. We've been doing the system for a year now, and they haven't asked for phase 2 yet. So it's like, yay. And again, one person, 2 hours a day versus 23 people throughout the company. So what we did was we had HR create us an Excel spreadsheet that they send to us every Monday that looks like this. It gives us the title, the employee ID, full name, job code. This is all one long spreadsheet. I mean, it goes to column X on an Excel spreadsheet. So our users get this Excel spreadsheet once every Monday. They take the information, they highlight everything but the header rows, and they paste it into our SharePoint list, just in a data sheet view. It takes them probably less than 5 minutes to paste that information in. So over a course of a year, we really haven't spent that much time for them to be able to upload new hires, terminations, all that stuff is just right there. So again, if you have processes that, I think we probably get maybe 10 entries a week. Again, we have 5,000 employees. Some of you might have a lot more than that, but when they do the copy and paste into the data sheet view, again, it only takes them like 5 minutes to do it. They wait for everything to process, and again, it's done. So once they copy that information, a workflow kicks off. That's when it goes through the process and starts to update that master list for the employee. We go through, we create some variables, and then we say if it's a new hire, or if it's an initial upload when we very first brought all the old information into the system, then we're going to go ahead and create an item in the master file, and we're going to go ahead and put some information in that. So the information that we're putting in there is we say, you know, the title equals the employee name or the employee number, department equals department, status, because it's a new hire, we're going to make them active. If it was a termination, we'd make them inactive. History, department start date. So a lot of these things just correlate from that upload to exactly what's in the SharePoint list. There are a few fields that we have done some customization. So again, status, new hires, I think I've got that on the next slide here. Active will be new hires, rehires, or move into the department. Inactive is going to be a termination or move out of the department. So that form update history that I had at the bottom, and again, from our list here, we've got history, and we're going to update some information there. What we did there to be able to update that history, again, this history section at the bottom, we went in and we said, when we did the SharePoint list, we set it up as a multiple line of text field, and we said append changes to existing text. That's how we were able to keep that information, just keeping to update that. And with the workflow in the history section there, you can customize it in InfoPath, change the fields around if you want to. We added some little, you'll notice we have little brackets around the items. Yeah, I can adjust the setting a little bit and make them prettier on there, but yeah. And then in SharePoint Designer, on that history field, when we're creating the new record, we just build a string and we say, okay, this is the action that was taken. Here's the hire date. And we bring in the hire date field. We put some little delimiters there and everything so that they can easily see the information. And again, this just appends it to the bottom of the record for each individual. That's our history. It's kind of our versioning history so that the auditors can see it on that individual person. One of the other requirements they had is they need to know what the person's job description looks like at a certain point in time. We had a system in SharePoint. We had a document library of all of our job descriptions. So trying to figure out anytime a job description changed and running that over to our other site collection to update this information and attach it to the file seemed impossible. Or vice versa, whenever somebody changed a job title in the URAC system, trying to go out and capture that information onto the other system. So it was kind of a back and forth. How do we make sure that we've got that information? So what we did, instead of actually bringing in the PDF document to attach to the file, we just created a variable or a string with some variable information. In our master file, we know what the person's job code is. On our job description, we name all of our job descriptions with that job code. So what we did was we created a job code variable for the URL that says, go to this site, go to the search results. So we knew with the search results, if you search for that employee job code, it would bring up that specific job description. We pasted in the job description code and we put it in for the search results. And that's how we were able to bring that link right into that individual thing. It's always updated. Every time we make a change to that employee, it links to the correct job description because we know what their job code is when we pass that information back and forth. So our master file, we have a couple other workflows on there. We have the email the department orientation checklist so that people know what's going out to them. We have the license or certification required. If we have the information for the employee, we put that out there. So when we upload documents to the system, if it's the information for their expiration date, their resume, we know exactly when they put it in, what the date of that resume was. We wait for the item to get checked in, we update the master file, and we indicate what type of document it was. So again, this is kind of where we went in and we matched on the job codes too. So this is our certification list. If your job code is this and you're an RN, we need to make sure that you have these specific components of certification. So we had another list that listed, these are all the job codes, these are those job code titles, and here's the certification that was required. So we just kind of matched those different lists up and then did some workflows there to know that they had those requirements done. Now our personnel documents folder, again, this is where we're tracking the resumes and the certification in there. We manually scan them, we upload them to the system. Again, she does it once a week typically, and then it updates the master file. We also have some metadata, again, where it says that this is the resume or the licensure, this is the issue date and the expiration date. We need to make sure that we know all of these pieces. So if an RN license or a driver's license is going to expire in a certain amount of time, we wanted to be able to have a view so that people would know, hey, it's about time to go ahead and get that new license or certification or the driver's license. So again, we're just doing, all of these lists are in our SharePoint site. One SharePoint site, we have our master file, we have our personnel documents, we have training history, we have license, and they're just interconnected. Again, all out of the box functionality, just using SharePoint Designer and the workflows. If we upload a resume to that personnel documents library, it goes out and updates the master file. It says, set the field to resume or CV date and put in the current issue date. There's some that we have that have expiration dates that we do too. So this is one that has the license or certification. If when I upload the document, I say it's license or certification, then we go ahead and put that also into our list. We update the master file, here's the date we've got it, here's our expiration date, and then here's the state that it's relevant for, because our nurses could have licenses in multiple states. The other piece we had, like I mentioned, is our training history. We needed to know that people completed the required amount of training that we needed to have done throughout the year. They're required to take ongoing training at least once a year. And so we said if it's this type of training or this type of training based on what we get loaded, then it updates that master file as well. Again, this is just an Excel report generated by HR. They go out to our learning management system. Again, another component that we would have to link into our system to make sure all the information was in there. So we just said, hey, you run the report, you copy and paste it into Excel, and it will upload all the information. The admin goes out and retrieves the information. They copy and paste it into the datasheet view, and it updates the master file, just like we have on all of our other stuff. So when it goes in, it says, again, what type of training is this? Goes out to the master file and updates that information. Now the workflow history alerts, what we did on that is we actually created a view for our admin so that she could control any time a workflow failed for some reason. Maybe she put in the wrong employee number, or the training didn't connect right, or something like that. So we created a view that just said, you know, show us all this information, the employee data upload, tell us what happened. If the employee data upload is not equal to 5 or is blank, or and is blank or whatever, then show us that information. Show us anything that failed. If you look at your workflow or your view that shows your workflow histories, if you export it to Excel, it'll tell you what numbers to look for. Anything that's a 5 is completed. The reason I did blanks is, you know, workflows will like go out of your system in like a month or something like that. So you want to make sure you don't bring those in, because there's no need to look at those again if she's looking at them on a regular basis. So when we created that view, so here's our personnel documents, here's our personnel document folders, employee data, and department orientation checklist. So that view that I created, I have it on one view or one page for her to look at all of the workflows for all the lists that we have. Anytime something shows up that is missing a workflow or it's failed, she can come out here and easily see that information and rerun that workflow, re-trigger it, do some auditing to see what's going on with it. And this is just a regular page with a lot of different SharePoint lists, and it's just pointing to that workflow errors view. There's another way that you can do this. There's a workflow history alert. So we did it kind of two ways. We did that view for her so that she would know what was going on, but we also created a workflow history alert. So anytime a workflow errored out, it would automatically notify her. So we went to the workflow history list, and all you do is you take your site name and your list and you append workflow history to the end of it. That will take you to all of the workflow histories that have run. Now what you do is you create a new calculated column on that same workflow history list where it says if it's this event type, make it yes, otherwise make it no. Once you've got that set, then you can go ahead and create a view that's based on if it's an error, if it's equal to yes, create me a view that just shows those items. Then what happens is now you just set an alert on that view itself. And that's how you can automatically send an email. So I have an email going to her as well as me, just so I can kind of be prepared if she's going to be calling me, like what's going on. So this information came from this website. I loved it. It was great because it gave us some really good tools for us to be able to figure out how to look at that history. Now, as far as auditing the data, again, like I mentioned, if the auditors come in, they want to see a full record of that employee. So what we did was we took a page, we added a bunch of our lists together, and we said, okay, bring in the master file, tell us what the list looks like, and we can filter that item on the list. And then we show the InfoPath form itself. I just took a subset of it so you guys could see it. And then we took the personnel documents section, another list that we have, and then we have our training report section. And we've just divided it out by different areas of where their training was at. So when the auditors come, we can just print this screen off for them and say, here's all the information on this employee. It shows exactly when their licenses expired and when they took the training that they needed to have done. So the auditors can look at this in one fell swoop and say, yep, everything's good, instead of going to all of those file shares and printing off 10 or 20 documents for them. So again, it was just multiple web parts, list and library web part, InfoPath, again, some more lists, and then we just connected them. So again, from the top screen there, we have a connection piece where they can search for the employee that they're looking for, then select, and it'll update all the information on that employee and link those lists together. The other thing we wanted to do is we wanted to give her a list of everything that was incomplete. So we would know that, you know, we're missing this piece of it. We're missing that piece of it. How can we see all the people? And you can see at that point we had like 26 people that were missing some items. And this also included new hires. New hires had like 45 days to complete their new employee orientation checklist. So there are people that are always going to be out in this incomplete dashboard. Out of the 700 people, 26 isn't too bad. So how we built this is we just said, you know, if the folder completion status is no, then it would show up on the list. And so we built this huge long if statement that just kind of put everything into there together. If their resume is equal to no, if their cert is equal to no, all of these different things, or, then make it no, otherwise make it yes. And that's what identified those columns as whether they completed it or not. Then what we did, you probably saw that there's like some color on there and stuff. We actually just threw a jQuery on there that said, if the column is equal to no, mark it in red. If it's equal to yes, mark it in green. And that way she could look across the whole thing and see where we were missing items. Again, one of the things that she never even thought she should ask for, because she never had the ability to track expiration dates. She wanted a view to be able to see, where are we at in the process? Is there somebody that's missing some information? We need to make sure that we have all of these expiration dates in place. So we created some views here for the master file and then the personnel documents to say, is the expiration date coming up? I think we set it for, is the expiration date coming up within 30 days? And then she can send out ongoing reminders to the people to say, you need to get that done. Make sure that you have this completed by XYZ date. So here's our master file list. We said, if the date is less than or equal to today plus 30, ongoing training date is blank, like they've never taken it. And the hire date is less than today minus 90, so that, you know, if they've been hired in the last 90 days, we don't really expect them to have all their stuff completed. We know that there's some things that we have to require. And we only wanted to look at active employees. So we have an active list as well as an inactive list, so we know where everybody is at on different things. And then the personnel documents list, again, same thing with the document expiration dates. You know, do they have all the information in place? So the last piece that we wanted to do with the people, or the admin, is we wanted to hand over the keys to them. We didn't want them to have to go to all site content, look in all the lists, try to figure out where they were at in the process. Does everybody have everything done? How do I get to this information? And my person was not very techy, and so she didn't understand the all site content. She wouldn't have figured out how to drill around. So what we did for her is we built this administration page for her. It's kind of like her central admin of what it is to us. So we said, okay, here's where you're going to upload the data. These are your file uploads. We just linked to that list. We linked to the data sheet view that she's going to upload the data directly to. We said, when I upload the employee data every Monday, and it's just of the employee demographic stuff, I'm just going to click on this link. If I need to upload a personnel document, this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to go ahead and put that resume right in here. I'm going to upload the information there. Training history, we have kind of separate different things for training, and the reports that we got from our learning management system look different based on the type of training. So we built her 4 different views of the training reports. If it's manually added by the employees, it looks like this. So we created that view just for those items. If it's an annual performance review, it looked a little bit different as well. License or certification, these are the lists where she can go in and say, an RN requires this type of licensure, so that she can update that information. Documentation, this is her admin guide, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. We have the flow chart that we had. We have my technical spec, so that I could share this with my other programmers and stuff while I was gone. If they needed to know why I had done something, we've got the tech spec out there. Reference documentation. Then we have our document libraries. So there's our audit findings. So when we had an audit come in, she would have a place to upload those results in the site. Our lists, and then our auditing views. Again, this is where that incomplete folder dashboard shows up, where all the red and green information is. So that's kind of where she goes most of the time. Expiration dates, again, this was just her view, just links to all the different lists that we had. So the admin guide that we set up for her looks like this. This is just like one piece of it. So I built the initial stuff. I said, here's what you're going to do with the information. When you get that file from HR, you're going to take it and you're going to copy and paste it in here. Make sure the field looks like this. Don't let it look like this because it's all going to copy into one cell. So with this admin document, it's just a Word document, and she can update it as often as she wants. I gave her the control of that document. I don't want to be updating it. I don't know what processes she's going to change, and she's the one that's doing the work. So when she calls me up and says, this doesn't seem like it's working quite right, I say, go put it in your admin guide of how you fixed it. So again, giving it back to her, I don't want to have to maintain that admin guide. That's something that we don't need to worry about. The technical documentation, on the other hand, this is something I do worry about. This is, again, for my team to know how to fix things. If I'm gone to London or something like that, they can fix stuff for. I know everybody uses different technical documentation. There's like a lot of, general practices and standards out there. We used to have a really long tech spec that had really specific things that you had to enter. None of us filled it out. It's laborious, it's a pain in the butt anytime you update something. So we just put it in OneNote. These are just the fields that we put out there. So at least we had some general information about, what's it about? What's this application even being used for? What was my go live dates? Give me a link to the list, because not all of us know where everything is. We don't want to have to drill around for everything. Who are the primary contacts? Who are the developers? Who are the business owners? Did I have versioning turned on? Was it in part of search? Just naming the workflows. Once you have the link to the list, you can get to the workflows. Just tell us what some of the workflows did. What reporting we had, permissions, SLA stuff, design constraints, interfaces, additional coding, which I never fill out. Well, I guess the jQuery is on there. And then just additional information. This is just one long document. I split it up into two sides so that you guys could see what it looks like. Again, this is just for your reference. Don't make it hard. Make it easy so that you can just type some general stuff in there as you go, and so that your other people can see what's going on. We created this as tabs across the top of our OneNote so that we can also put emails in there if we needed to. So like if you're working on something, there's a specific email that's related to this application, you can just copy and paste it right into your OneNote or send it to OneNote. Training the admin. This is where the important part comes in. Make sure that you train your admin so that they know what they're doing, they can troubleshoot it themselves. We don't want to have to be maintaining this stuff for the rest of our lives. I mean, we don't have time to maintain all of the apps that are out there. It's difficult enough doing all the other stuff that we've got to do, and we've got to keep building new apps for people. Turn the keys over to them. We actually, in our company, again, we have about 5,000 employees. We actually have a SharePoint user group that meets once a month. Just in our company, we have about 180 to 200 employees that participate in that every month, which is exciting. I mean, it's been great. So training our users throughout the life cycle of all the programs has been really helpful because they can troubleshoot their own things. And it's good too for them because they know what to ask for. When you start doing that requirements gathering, they come with those informations. They actually know what a workflow is. They say, hey, can we have a workflow that does this? And you're like, sure, that'd be great. So the more that you can educate your users, the more that they will help give you the tools and the information that they need to help build it together. The other thing that we do is we actually created our intranet is called Spark. And so we actually created a Spark University. And what we've done is we've done a lot of 2 to 5 minute videos for our employees so that they can just look at the information, hop right to what they're looking for, and then hop back out. We actually use a tool called Snagit. It's from TechSmith. It's a great tool. Version 12 allows you to record video. And so we just record those short little videos. I've started also on some of my requirements gathering, or when I get ready to train the user, I actually record like a 5-minute video and put it on their website as well so that all their users can look at it. It's a lot easier to look at a 2 to 5 minute video than it is to read through a document. So if you can record those, it's really helpful. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm going to let you guys go a little bit early so you guys can get down there for lunch early. But I hope that you guys have had some aha moments that you say, I can use this for my application. Just general information. Again, this is just what we've done in our company. These are general processes. Does anybody have any questions?